Oh, I can see. Yeah, I can see the attendees are joining now.
Perfect. So we can check momentarily if they can hear us. And
Lovely.
A quick question. Can I keep muted until it's my turn?
yes.
Also, we're recording now, Renshin, so anything you, if you're muted, it's safer. But,
I can see the attendees coming, so we're just going to give it a little longer to let a few more people before we formally get started, but to just say a quick hello to everyone that is here so far, and we'll jump into it momentarily.
see people trickling in. We should have elevator music.
Yeah, have elevator music. And it sounds like we should have Who Let the Dogs Out.
I guess I should mute that. That's my way.
No, it's what happens while we run webinars from home. It comes with the territory. So.
It's always the Amazon or the FedEx person always likes to arrive right during webinars. So, let me mute myself here.
So what I'll do is I'll get started with some introductory comments, and then as we continue and as the rest of the attendees join, then I'll dive into a bit more of the substantive content. So first of all, I hope everyone can see me and hear me okay. I already got a message from one of you saying you can hear me okay, so that's good. One of the challenges of running webinars from home is just that we need to make sure of these things. But thank you all for joining us here today. We are excited for what we're about to share with the rest of you. Feel free to use the chat for any questions that you have coming up throughout it. You don't have to necessarily wait for a period of time. What we're going to do with questions is, to the extent that we can address them as we go, we will. And if any of them remain unanswered at the end of it, we want to be respectful of your time, so we don't want to keep you past the initial committed time. But if any questions remain unanswered, we'll reach out to you and make sure that we individually address some of these. At the same time, if any of you would like further demos, additional trainings, I know that today is not designed to be exhaustive. We're just sort of showcasing a few of the additional features, but there's a lot to it. So obviously we're happy to do more detailed trainings and dive into a bit more detail. So please don't hesitate to let us know if you have questions on that end. We're happy to address them. So we're now at 5 after, so I'll continue with the more formal part. I know we have a fair bit to show you, so we want to be respectful of everyone's time. Just to introduce myself, my name is Gary Kalazzi. I'm the CEO at Alexa Translations and Alexa Translations AI. And today I have my colleagues, Jason, the way they appear on the screen, or at least on my screen, so I'll start in that order. So Jason Cox, who's our sales engineer, Mark Vecchiarelli, our VP of marketing, and Renxian Zhang, who's, and I made sure I said the name properly in Chinese, being in the business we're in, we need to be able to say it properly. And he's our EVP of R&D, and you'll hear from all of them throughout the session today, and I'll make sure to introduce them in a bit more detail as we go into the various parts. So I'll start with a little bit of history and then go from there. So many of you are aware of us, Alexa Translations, what we do, and obviously the sort of the history. But so indulge me if any of you have heard this in the past. Alexa Translations for many years was a professional translation services firm that did focus largely on legal financial, not exclusively, but did a lot of work in the legal and financial space. In 2018, we did the acquisition of what is now Alexa Translations AI. We brought in this technology partially because client demand said AI is going to be a big player in our futures. And the thinking we had to do at Alexa is, at one point, we're either going to have to license a third-party AI, or we're going to have our own. And the reason for the acquisition is so that we actually had something that was our own, and that we could be able to be that provider in the space. Now, historically, the AI has been something that there's been players that have been in it for many years. What we wanted to do is get something that was really narrowly focused. So we said, we don't need to be the best at all things. We needed to be the best at Canadian French. So whether we're translating English to French or French to English for the Canadian marketplace, make this the best tool that is available in the marketplace. And even more so, make it a tool that is that can be highly tailored, highly customized. Something that if you are an enterprise, you can train it with your data. But somebody asked me the other day, if I'm a freelancer and I want to use it, can I still use it? As long as it's a freelancer that does a fair bit of volume where their own training data, it can actually add value to this, then of course it makes sense. But the value add is really designed to help organizations that want to tailor this heavily and reduce the amount of heavy lifting that translators have to do. Now, the tool is not meant exclusively for translators, although a lot of the features that we are going to talk about today, the translators will be far more familiar with than non-translators. But I'll give you some of the current applications of where this works. And I'll start with some of the simplest applications, and then go into some of the more complex where translators are using it. So if you are a lawyer in private practice, you got a statement of claim, you are unilingual, you speak English, you may speak a little bit of French, but not sufficient to understand what the statement of claim says in French. You could upload the statement of claim, and it could be a scan. Our tool will OCR it, translate it, maintain the formatting, and give it back to you within a matter of tens of seconds. So that's, if you want to be able to prepare and know what the documentation is about, the tool is great at giving you that context. Obviously, this won't be able to be used for official purposes. That's where the translators will come in, but certainly for information purposes, it's sufficient. Then you will have the colleagues that are bilingual. They will do a lot of internal communications. They will do them bilingually, but often have to drop the English version and then prepare a French version. Or sometimes they go into some of the free online tools and they'll say, okay, let me put in the English version there, get a French version, then modify. What we wanted to do is highly customize it so that when you actually get their French version from our tool, you have to do very little to it afterwards. And again, the more you use it, the more it customizes for your purposes. The tool is very translator-centric, and this is where it actually, that's why I left the translator component for last, because if you're a translator, about 20 years ago, CAT tools started becoming prevalent in the translation space. And this is just the next step in the evolution. So what we did is we actually made sure that our AI technology can API to any of the main CAT tools that are available in the marketplace. Renxian has them listed a bit later in the presentation, so I will leave that for him. But the context is we can API this to all of the CAT tools that you're likely to use, but also to third-party tools that whether you have an intranet or other components within your organization. We've made the API available, and we can also adapt it to whatever you may need. What we really want for translators is, this is the solution to make your life easier. So when you have those days with what seems like an impossible deadline, and I know on the line we have lawyers, we have accountants, we have professionals, but we have translators. So to all the professionals out there, Because you're not necessarily translators by background, sometimes the demands can come in across very demanding to the translators, and the timelines can seem extremely tight. So translators are often in a position where you have to deal with a timeline that, if it was strictly heavy lifting the traditional way, may often be impossible. What the tool is designed to do is to help with that, to actually reduce the timeline that would be where you're post-editing this content, and post-editing it effectively, where it adjusts to your needs and to what you are looking to do with it. We want when you're dealing with a filing deadline, and many of the translators on the line will have been through this, whether it's a securities deadline or whether it's a piece of litigation that you're dealing with, where the rules of civil procedure are indicating when you actually have to file this. You don't have a choice. If your kid is sick, if you are late at night, often you don't have a choice to actually, because the deadlines are really hard to push. So whatever we can do to help reduce the timeline is powerful, and this is part of why we're here. What I'm excited about showing you today is that a lot of this came as a result of your feedback. And the reason why that's important is that we're here to listen. We're here to say that when you give us feedback, we listen to it, and as long as there's value to it for many of you versus just an individual scenario, we'll make sure that it's implemented, and we'll consistently do that. We'll obsessively listen to your feedback and make sure we keep evolving. Many of you have known us for over a year and have seen that evolution firsthand, but some of you are meeting us for the first time. And I wanted to make sure that you knew that we're open to the feedback, we want to hear it, and you'll be surprised how quickly you can see it implemented. Without further ado, I will introduce my two colleagues again, Mark Vecchiarelli, our VP of Marketing, and I should say Vecchiarelli, I should say it properly, and even use my hands as I say it, and Jason, who I introduced briefly before, but Jason will speak to the technical aspects of it while Mark takes us through the tool. And I will jump in with some of the feedback and scenarios that we've learned from demos with you and situations that we've encountered with you over time. Mark, I'll let you take it from here.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Gary. And likewise, I will kind of echo the disclaimer that you mentioned off the top about this is, we're not looking to do a step-by-step instructional guide, but we really want to highlight some of the core features of the platform, along with some of the brand new elements that we've rolled out in our latest version, which is now 2.1. So again, also, as Gary mentioned, don't hesitate to reach out with questions in the chat or afterwards, should you wish to chat offline or anything of that nature. We'll have contact information at the end. So first of all, I'll check as well. If anyone can't see the screen that Jason is sharing, then let us know, but I can see it okay, so hopefully everybody else can. So let's kick things off, maybe just with, if you could log in, Jason. And we'll highlight maybe a number of new improvements overall. So just at a glance, we really shifted to putting the clients in the center of our product design. So as you may have seen late last year, we completely overhauled the design and put a lot of thought not only into the look and feel, but the entire workflow. So now you'll see that the platform is more responsive and easy to use. Window panes can be minimized for a bigger workspace, or they can be expanded, depending on what you're looking for. But all of our settings are just one click away on the right. Tables are now sortable, filterable, searchable. And overall, that just means less clicks and a better experience, no matter what your screen size or your preferred working arrangement. So that's the UX, the user experience emphasis that we put. The other key element we've been working on and continue to work on is improving our customer service. So we also introduced a suite of customer service options. So now you can connect with us via an intelligent AI chatbot, as well as live agents when they're available, or you can leverage our robust knowledge base, which gives you step-by-step instructions on common features and different instructions on just different elements of the platform. So this is all part of our efforts to open lines of communication with our clients and to get that feedback that Gary was also discussing about, what are some ways that we can improve the platform as we move along. It helps us to be more agile that way as well. So if that makes sense to everybody, let's take a look at some of the tools and resources that we have at our disposal. So our core function is, of course, translations. So we can start here on the translate page, and we can start with translating documents. So if this were our only page on the platform, we would already be head and shoulders above much of the competition on the market. And why is that? Well, aside from the powerful AI engine, which Renshin will discuss shortly, we can simultaneously translate up to 100 documents at a time. We also support a plethora of file types. So a lot of the common Microsoft Office suite documents like Word, Excel, PowerPoint. We also support Adobe InDesign, Adobe PDF, and even popular markup languages like HTML, XML, etc. So that's another great feature. The other thing is we can take formatted documents, which included designed documents, and output them with the exact same formatting and designs, which is actually also quite impressive and quite easy to use. And then another great feature just on this page is that we also use OCR, so optical character recognition. This helps to extract text from scanned documents or images. And again, some of you may know this, some of you may not, depending on your level of expertise, but that's just to name a few of the features just on the Translate Documents page. If you jump over to the Translate Text page, Jason, you'll see that we also offer live text translations where you can translate up to 5,000 characters worth of text on the fly. So you can edit these translations as well based on your preferences, and then save them for later use. And when you go to save them, you can save them as term bases or as translation memories. And really to just simplify it, a term base is usually just a word or a short phrase. So you could think of maybe company names. And translation memories would fall into more longer paragraphs or sentences where more context is important. So you can think of company descriptions or boilerplate messaging that you might want to reuse. We'll get into TMs and TBs a bit more shortly, but you can see both of those functions are great and don't require any advanced level of translation expertise, although that's always beneficial. Maybe I'll just pause here too, Gary, if there's anything that, feel free to jump in if there's any extra context that you'd like to add on TM.
No, and obviously some of this TB and term-based and translation memory definitions will be redundant for the translators, but for the benefit of some of the attendees that are not translators by background, that's the description for Mark. And this is the simplest way to say some of your preferences. What we're about to show you will be the sort of the more advanced way, and part of what we wanted to establish is the closest thing to having a catchment built within Alexa, the Alexa editor, with the intention of saying, how do we get closest to getting your feedback from your changes live, which is so important to adjusting and to having that adjustment to you at an individual level, but also organizational. Mark, I'll give it back to you before I get too excited with this.
Wonderful, yeah. So let's keep. Well, Jason will keep working through the tools there. So on the left, and to your point, Gary, yeah, we're going to kind of progressively go up a little bit in terms of detail. So hopefully this caters to everybody. But if we so if we go to maybe the term bases page, you'll see that not only can you create TBs and TMs by saving your edited text translations, but you can also upload and manage your own TM and TB files here. This means you can prioritize, edit, remove as you see fit. And then when translating, the system will refer to those priorities in terms of usage. You'll also notice that you can now apply tags. So this is a totally new feature, which is helpful for categorizing and grouping based on specific domains of content. We'll get into that shortly as well, but just wanted to highlight that on this particular page. So the translation memories page on the left is very similar to the term-based page. So we'll probably just jump over that one, I think. But the My Edits page, so those edits that we made on the live text translation a little earlier, those are stored here for later reference. And you can also edit these or remove them. But it's structured in a similar way where the system will reference your personal edits and also prioritize them based on your preferred level of prioritization. Just below that, we also have the My Files page. This is a secure online repository for your translated documents. So this can also be turned off. This is turned off by default, but and also just so everybody knows, nothing is ever stored here without your permission. But it can definitely be helpful if you need a place to keep or reference your translations. And that's also something you can easily enable or disable in the quick settings on the right. So moving right along, the other elements, and also, you can comment as well if we're going too quick or too slow. But so we'll move over to the tools section at the top there, and where we have the TM creator. So again, apologies for any who already know about this tool, but for those that don't, this tool is a bit more for the advanced user. But essentially, you would upload a source and target document, and our tool will align the translated segments. In other words, separate the sentences and phrases and put them in tables. And then it would clean that file. In other words, remove any mismatched translations based on your preferred level of cleaning. So you'll notice on the left, you can actually set the level of processing or cleaning based on your preference. So a lower level would essentially require more post-editing of the TM, which might be desirable for translators that would want to make their own edits. Whereas higher processing would create a higher quality TM file and requires less post-editing, which might be useful, I guess, if you don't have a skilled translator at your disposal. Gary, I imagine there's other use case scenarios as well. I don't know if we want to highlight it any before I move on.
For sure. So as background here, the reason why we came up with this and the various gears is that the AI is extremely sensitive to what you call impure translation or translations that may have issues with them, or sometimes doubling for the same terms. So when we are training the AI, we'd go with some of the highest gears here. But because many of you on the line are translators, professionals can use some of the lowest gears, and that actually helps them in the day-to-day because it'll give them options. It'll still keep things in translation memory, even if you have 2-3 entries for the same thing, because sometimes the same phrase can be translated a little differently depending on the context. So happy to chat about some of these gears because the description that you see there as you select them has some context, but if you need any further, happy to chat about those offline. But as the overall recommendation, the lowest gears for the translators, if you're a non-translator, select the upper gears.
Wonderful. And for even faster workflow, I forgot to mention as well, you can align multiple pairs of files at the same time. So that's another very powerful feature for the TM creator. The TM cleaner, which you'll see just below that, is very similar. However, this is applicable in cases when you already have a TM. So from a CAT tool, for example, and you'd like to clean it. So the TM creator essentially, it also cleans, but in this case, you would just clean the document and not create your TM from your previous source and target documents. So I think that just so I don't replicate too much of the explanation on that one, I think we're good there. Down below, you'll notice the usage section, which is fairly self-explanatory. I mean, we can easily see the usage bar, but we can also review usage by user or by enterprise. And you can export or print detailed reports with that information as well. So the enterprise data will be on the right in that card there. And on the left, you can see the breakdown by user. We also have API information in there, which is why you'll see that instead of Bob and Jane, you'll see different API or company names there. But yeah, so that's that at a glance. And now on to some of the new features, which we're excited to announce in version 2.1. So we're super pleased to bring you a new project management function, which in essence allows you to create, manage, and group your translations by project. So this is incredibly helpful for organizations that need to organize their workflow differently based on subject matter or department, kind of like when we were talking about those tags. So for example, the marketing department will use different terms or phrases than the legal department. And maybe we can do a walkthrough of that as well. So maybe Jason, we can start by creating a project, and you can add the name, like the name of your project, whatever you might like it to be. ID and status are auto-generated based on the progress. TM matching threshold, this determines the match rate between a source document segment and a translation memory segment. And we'll show more on this shortly, but PO number, when creating a project, you can now utilize PO numbers to easily track and bill for client work. And this, as Gary mentioned earlier, is one of the many feature requests we received from clients that we were able to implement. So that's great as well. And then tags. So we mentioned tags off the top. So this is actually quite powerful, even though it's seemingly very simple, because if you recall, we were assigning tags to TMs and TBs. So now under projects, we can quickly and easily import all of the relevant tags and TBs with one click. So everything that was tagged marketing can now be pulled into this particular project just by adding that marketing tag. And then I guess we'll keep moving on here, Jason, to the project page. Maybe we can open one of these projects. So on the project page, you'll see again all of your project details under the first tab. Under the second tab, you'll see all of the TMs and TBs that were pulled in based on the tags that you set. And you'll also notice you can set the TMs to be read-only or writable or editable if you, not edible, you can't eat them, but editable if they were unchecked. So this is important for the next section where you can decide if you want to update your TMs on the fly. So we'll talk about that in just one second. But the last tab on the bottom there is the jobs, translation jobs. So all of these jobs are leveraging any of these project-specific settings thanks to this new project management function. So when you have TMs and TBs, when you have PO numbers, anything that applies to that project will be translated using those features. So again, very, very powerful stuff there. And so this segues into the second major feature release in version 2.1, which is our built-in cat editor. So now you can edit your translations or your translated documents in real time. And you can also leverage a multitude of intelligent segment sources. So let's talk about those intelligent segment sources, which you can see in the center column there. There's a lot of acronyms, so I'll just, but we've seen a lot of these acronyms and we're familiar with a lot of them, like TMs and TBs we discussed. MT would be our bleeding edge machine translation engine. And there's even a new one, which is precedent documents. So when you're working on the translation of your documents, we're pulling from these multiple sources to help inform how the translation is completed. And also, I'm sure everybody's familiar with as well, all the translators for sure, with match rates. So you'll see the match rate to the right of the acronym there. But maybe we can jump back just for a second, Jason, to the precedent document, how you would create one as well. So precedent documents are also incredibly powerful when you want to translate documents that are mostly the same or that are share several similar sections that you would want to be exactly the same. So you can think of, again, boilerplate items or contracts where only a company or a date or an amount would change, but the rest of the document should stay the same. So precedent documents allow you to upload the source and target of a previously translated set of documents. And then our platform determines where they're different. And then you can leverage that past work so that your translations are more reliable and consistent. I think hopefully I'm doing that justice, Gary. I don't know if there's additional context you want to add to the precedent documents as well.
No, you're doing a great justice. But what I did want to say is this is a perfect example of a scenario that came up as a result of our client saying, listen, we have a document. So I am translator X working at an accounting firm. I have an MRFP I'm updating on behalf of the client. I worked on this last year. I know it's good quality because I did it last year. Now there's a bunch of updates. I only want to review what's new. I don't want to review everything else. How can Alexa help versus retranslating the entire thing? And frankly, until this release, it did retranslate the entire thing. And we listen and we put that in place. And the idea is you can now update documents much faster because you only have to review the few pieces that were added versus the entirety of the document.
Right, exactly. So wonderful. So now just jumping back to the CAT editor now, there's a couple of additional features I want to highlight. So on the bottom of the screen, you'll notice, excuse me, that we've added a window pane where you can find a list of the actual segments along with which segments source they come from. And then you can easily apply your preferred translation results using the arrow on the right. So essentially, we've just given you these translation results as tools that you can then leverage and apply based on your preference. The other important piece is that you can leverage our WYSIWYG editor. So you can, well, first of all, I should say that you're able to edit, of course, as a CAT editor, you would expect the plain text, but you can also use our WYSIWYG editor. So WYSIWYG, for those of you who don't know, is what you see is what you get. It's just an acronym that you've guaranteed have used on your phones or on anything digital online where you want to add formatting. So bold or italics or, you know, subscript, superscript, all of that stuff is now at your fingertips as well. And then finally, if we go back to on the bottom there, I think we just want to talk about the search function. Exactly that. So this allows you to explore other segments from the entire enterprise. You can quickly and easily filter it just by clicking, again, just one click on whatever those, you know, if it's TBs or TM, however you want to filter by language direction, or you can, you know, use whatever search term you like. And this will scan all of the TMs and TBs, and then you can reference those. You can almost think of it as like an enterprise research tool that you can use for even more suggestions for your translations. And then, of course, you can export those to the documents that you know, the formatting that is allowed based on the source. And yeah, I think that summarizes a lot of the new features. Again, if there's any questions about that, then we're happy to answer any of those. But yeah, just these are really just I guess to conclude that these are just a few of the incredible features that we have and that we've been working really hard on over the past several months. So, you know, aside from just trying to make the platform better and easier to use, there's been a lot of great advancements to our AI, which is probably a good segue into Renshin's next piece. But I'll turn it over to you, Gary.
No, and the presentation again is not designed to be exhaustive in all the features. There's a lot that will come up as we you know, as we dive into it further. With a lot of you, we'll set up some of the individual discussions. I know there's some questions in terms of who would have access to it, and theoretically everyone can have access, and we'll work with you to figure out something that will actually work. The idea, so overall, the idea with this is if you're a translator and you're using CAT tools and you're comfortable using your CAT tool, you don't need to replace your existing workflow. But often you have translators that don't use CAT tools often, or they don't use them regularly or don't use them at all. Then this is a great way to actually capture the changes without having to adjust to a work tool. So if you don't need to change the current workflow, that's not a problem, but make sure that letting you know that this is available adds a lot to the functionality. Now, if you're not a translator with the access to a CAT tool, or you're a non-translator, but you're bilingual and you want to make these changes, even more of a reason to use it, because you're still capturing everything that you're making as a change as you go, without having to buy additional tools. So that's an important piece of why we wanted to do this. And I know there are some questions in which where it says, how do we know which translation memory the translation comes from? So I'll let Jason sort of show it where it is here. The short answer overall is that they're all from your own enterprise, but then the tags will help indicate where it's coming from. But Jason, some of the more technical questions, I'll defer to you.
I haven't seen that specific question, but basically when you're in any individual segment, you can go to the actual line item, and you will be able to see the actual source behind it. So I actually don't think I have one loaded for that, but basically it will be a hover over. And so in the case where, in this case, I only have one, but in the case that where you've loaded up multiple of them, you can hover over here and grab the actual file name. And that can be really helpful if you've got, 5 different results from different files. You want to know, like, depending, because sometimes you can add some additional translation memories or term bases to your project that aren't exactly what you're working on, but you want to kind of use them as a reference, and they can be lower priority. It's nice to be able to tell which ones are coming from your in-domain files, resources.
So just to address some of the other questions that are popping up, in order to train with past data, you can upload existing translation memories that you can download from CAT tools. Or if you don't have translation memories, you're just using our translation memory creator, or you would actually upload the English and the French documents, or French and English, depending on which order, and it'll create the TMs for you. So it's important that to have the ability to train with your data is a critical component of our technology, so that you don't reinvent the wheel. In terms of which CAD tools it works better, that's a difficult question, because a lot of it depends on the functionality of the tool. We've done all the efforts on our end to make sure that all the CAD tools can use it effectively. And then it's really up to the end user, how familiar you are with the various CAD tools you're using and how it interacts with you. So those would be a couple of the elements. And I want to make sure, please continue to ask the questions. I know Jason is making some notes, and we can address a few more at the end. I do want, while we do that, and then you think of any other questions, I'm going to introduce briefly our head of AI, Renshin Zhang. And Renshin, for some of you have met him in the past, and some of you haven't. Renshin couldn't get enough of education, and after he did his first PhD, he decided to do a second PhD. So he did it in linguistics and computer programming with natural language processing focus. So tells you, it tells you that the combination exists in the world, albeit rare. So Renshin, I will let you take it from here and sort of give a sense. And what I want you to the audience, especially because a lot of them are translators and have background in the space, is some of what's exciting here, but also where this is going overall. How is this going to help translators in the future, and how translators can best prepare to adapt with using these tools to the best, to the maximum, in order to really help their workflow and get rid of some of the monotonous and the boring work that translators don't enjoy anyway.
Thank you, Gary. For the kind words and introduction. And hello, everyone. I am Renshin Zhang, Executive VP of Research and Development at Alexa Translations. I'm very honored to attend this webinar and very excited to share with you what we have built and what we have shown you today, and what makes Alexa Translations AI a great product. Towards the end of my talk, I will also address some of what Gary mentioned. So let me first talk about AI. AI, that is our core technology that drives everything that you have seen today. As you probably know, artificial intelligence, or AI, is reshaping our world in various aspects, from smart chess players to COVID vaccine research assistants, to autopiloting cars, to natural language processing applications. And on this, we are talking about translation. At Alexa Translations, we are striving to combine the state-of-the-art AI technology with our human expertise to create a solution to the English-French professional translations on the Canadian landscape. And I'm very proud to say that our core technology AI has been patented, which applies the latest AI to the whole process of translation. And let me give you some facts. And to understand how good our machine translation is, I will speak to the accuracy and the speed of our translation. So in one of our human evaluation tests, we use professional translators to really look at the output by our machines and tell how good they are. So in one of those tests, our AI translations are preferred 4 times as often as our closest competitor among a bunch of machine translations. And in the other test, which is a closed real document translation test, up to 93% of the AI translations need no or very little corrections to be publishable. So in terms of speed, our AI engine translates your document at 300 to 500 words per second, depending on the type and the complexity of your document. If your documents will be translated simultaneously, and it can also be done in the blink of an eye. All this is driven by our powerful AI engine. So imagine how the day starts in your office or home office with just a few clicks. You will get your important legal or financial documents translated for you before you even finish making your morning coffee. Well, our AI work does not stop there. I am currently leading a very smart and a cohesive team to build an even better AI solution to helping you translate even more accurately, even more quickly, and more consistently. My colleagues, especially Mark and Jason, they have talked a lot about our new product release, that is version 2.1. I'm not going to repeat most of what they have said, but I will mention 2 unique features in this release that distinguish us from many similar products on the market. The first one is the tagging mechanism, as you have seen, as Jason showed you. It is very convenient for you to use and very helpful to organize translation projects and related resources. By related resources, I mean translation memories and term bases. The second unique feature is the precedent document-based translation. I cannot overemphasize it. I think both Mark and Gary talked about it because we are really excited about it. We really like it. It will help you to translate, for example, this month's document based on a similar document that you just translated last month. And to the best of my knowledge, this product is the only one on the market up to now that provides this great efficiency boosting function. I'd also like to talk about our other efforts. Like we have also established partnering relationships with many other key players in the translation industry. For example, to some of you, you may have heard of those names like SDL, MemoQ, and so on. So you will have access to Alexa Translations AI in those products like SDL Trados, MemoQ, MemSource, Terminatics, Logiterm, FlowFit products, and so on. Now, at this point, I would like to share with you the biggest secret to our success. It is not our $30,000 supercomputers or a killer AI algorithm or anything like that, although those are important. Well, the biggest secret is our dedication to service and adaptation to your feedback. Well, Gary, I think you already leaked that secret. Okay, but it's important for me to emphasize it here because I do believe our technological innovations and achievements are ultimately driven by your needs and feedback. We listen to everything from you about our AI, good or bad, and we respond promptly to it. And believe me, the 2.1 release will not be the same without the many suggestions and the feedback from our clients. Okay, and before we enter the real Q&A, I will do one first myself. And I know many of you have questions about machine translation, and very frequently I got asked one key question. I believe you also want to ask me this question. That is, will the machine replace the professional translator? Yes or no? Let me answer it now. And my answer is no. I don't believe machine translations will really replace professional translations. On the contrary, professional translators will be empowered by machine translation, and they will enjoy working with AI. And to those translators who are still skeptical about machine translation, I will say to you, don't worry about machine translation ever replacing you. What you should really be worried about is your colleagues, those other professional translators who already know how to work with machine translations and make use of the power of AI. That is what you should be very worried about. Okay, that concludes my talk. Thank you, Gary.
Thank you, Renshin. And to Renshin's point, we've been in a fortunate position where, because we've had internal translators, we get some of the feedback firsthand before our clients or trial users have even had a chance to use it. That doesn't mean that just because we have internal translators that we encounter everything on our own. And you use it in a variety of different contexts, which is why it's important to hear. And the commitment that you have from us is we will be service obsessed. We will be accommodating what you're looking for, because the idea here is to put the translators in the driver's seat and say, here's the best way to use it. Here's how I can maximize my time. And here's how I make my job more exciting, because I don't have to do the boring aspects of it as much as I used to. I know there's some questions that have been added on there, and Jason has actually been addressing them as they go. There was one more thing that I wanted to add in terms of the evolution of where things are going. So the early iteration of our AI, so just over a year ago when we first released it, was really an ability to upload documents, translate them, get them back while maintaining the formatting. And we were initially was limited format, so we could do Word and PowerPoint, etc. And then we added a lot more functionality in terms of documents we can do, editing them, etc. So there's two parts of the evolution of our technology. There's the features part. So this is a lot of what you saw today. And then there's the part that is under the hood, the part that it's so hard for you to see because it's not visible until you compare translations now from 6 months ago, and you see the evolution of how far it's come along just in a matter of a few months. It's much easier to show the features here, but a lot of the work that Renshin and team do behind the scenes can only be seen over time. And because a lot of you use it gradually and almost every day, that change seems gradual versus and I've encouraged a lot of our trial users from the past to say, try it now. You remember it, you used it last spring. Okay, well, we're now a year down the road. And COVID may have been boring for everyone else, but we certainly made the most of it at Alexa, and it'll show. So that's one of those things that I want to make sure that, if you hadn't used it in a while, please do. I promise you'll notice a substantial difference. Features aside, because I know these are great, and you will find very helpful what we just released today, but there's so much more to it. So Jason, I don't know if some of this, I know you've been addressing them as you speak, or rather with the typing, but do you want to speak to any of them or as overall conclusions perhaps?
Really good idea. So
Okay.
we have a couple of questions here. One is about training. And so I don't think we've touched on it in this particular presentation, but most of what you saw in the presentation today with the term bases and translation memories, those are ways to enact immediate change. You can customize your account and your translation results with those two features in an immediate way. But also in the situation where if you happen to have an enormous amount of training data, we can also accommodate that and build a custom neural machine translation engine on your behalf. So I just wanted to mention that. So for most people, it's they'll be best served by the translation memories and term bases. However, if you have invested a lot in translation in the past, we can actually turn that into your own engine. and then,
Jason, let me pose a question like I'm a panelist, or rather
yeah.
like I'm one of the attendees. When is the right time to say, can I have my own engine? When do I need my own engine? Versus, elaborate training with TMs and TBs.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Is it kind of depends upon the person or the kind of the situation, but Renchen, do you have a guideline for that? I think we usually say like a million pairs.
Approximately, right. Yes, you're correct. So in order to train a meaningful, a working machine, a custom neural machine translation engine that works for your data, we would expect, a lot of data from you. So I will say at least 1 million. The more, the better. Otherwise, the machine will be undertrained, and an undertrained machine will not be very happy to work for you.
And because we've had this discussion with several of you, even that are attending here today, the ideal scenario, and these are things that we always talk about on the back end and say, what's the minimum we can do and what's ideal. The 10 million segments, it becomes ideal because you have enough variety that where you see excellent results. So obviously that part of that depends. The larger the organization, the better, the more likely you are to have this information. Whereas for smaller organizations, having the dedicated neural machine won't make as much sense because you won't have the data to truly make a substantial difference on it. Jason, there is one question I want to address from Andréane, which in terms of partially matching segments. So as you saw we're able to put in a percentage of saying that, if it's lower than X percentage, have the MT do the translation. So we had left it at 90 there because we recommend if it's under 90%, it's very likely that our AI will do a better job than the partial matched MTs. And if I understand Andréane's question correctly, let's say if it's above that threshold, whatever that threshold is set at, what would happen if it's a partial match like that, whether we would translate it, whether the MT would translate it or not. So Jason, perhaps you can address it, or Renchen, whoever would prefer.
I believe what you'll see is that you'll have, so depending on the matching threshold that you specify in the project. So prior to us having a project and specifically an editor, we only applied 100% matches because that's the only thing that's safe to do when you're in a hands-off situation. But now that we have an editor and we can present that to the individual users in a row-by-row basis, we're allowing you to specify that less of a match, and so you could still leave this at 100, or you could adjust it based upon who's going to be doing the review. And so if you have a linguist on your team that is going to be doing the review, a fairly low matching threshold would be a good fit for you because it's going to give that linguist more context in the additional in your additional options. But to your point, if you don't have a linguist and you're not going to be reviewing that, then you want to leave that at 100, so that it's the safest it can be.
Yeah, and what will happen once you put it at 100, anything that is under the AI will actually translate the partial match segment, and it'll make a determination on which parts of it to use and which parts to update. I've had to ask a lot of these questions on my end to Renchen before. At one point, I got so specific with my questions, Renchen started drawing an equation on the whiteboard, and that's when I said, "Okay, you're losing me here." But if there are any additional questions, please let us know. What I want to do is a lot of this will be customized to your individual organizations, and we can talk about your individual context. So please, you will have our information now at Laura, who you haven't seen, and I didn't get a chance to introduce her, but she's from our marketing team and playing behind the scenes, making sure to make us all look good, including coming up with this nice background that she put here. So Laura will share our contact information, and the reason why that's important is because we want to talk about your individual context and how to best apply to your individual context. This is an important piece for us to be able to discuss and take you through it at an individual detail. So the link that you have there will give you the opportunity to ask for a demo, but also to ask for us to connect with you individually. I know that all of you are busy, and some of you may have calls to drop off and switch to another Zoom or other platform link in a matter of minutes. So I want to try to give you back a couple minutes at the end, and thank you for attending today. Thank you to the panelists for your time, and I'm glad that the audience got a chance to hear from you, because often they hear from our client success team and not necessarily from some of the people that are hands-on with the technical aspects of our business. So I appreciate you all making the time, and to all the audience, please connect with us. We'd be happy to take you through all the details in the future.
Awesome.
Thank you all for attending.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.